friends. Welcome back to the practice of being human. Today, I want to talk about something that has truly surprised me in the most beautiful way. It wasn't planned, it wasn't formal, it wasn't some, big healing strategy on my part. But here we are. It has become deeply healing. And this episode is about that very thing, the unexpected gift of voice memos. Specifically, the voice memos my brother Carl and I have been exchanging over this last season, probably this last year, most especially, of life. And I can honestly say that they have been holy, medicinal for me. It's not been this very hugely dramatic kind of breakthrough all at once kind of thing, but it has been more slow, tender, and human. And it's been one message at a time. And in these messages, we share memories and reflections, and we kind of go back to when we were little. To give a little context, my brother Carl and I are the youngest two in our family. There's 5 siblings, and mom and dad. My dad died in 2017, my mom in 2023, and then my oldest brother Mark, who was special needs, died in 2022, so a year before my mom. And Carl and I, as the youngest two of the crew, we have always shared this very kind of special and unbreakable bond, as Carl would say. He's described it as such, and I think it's fair. It's accurate. And it's certainly been complicated at times and very layered, but strong. And after my mom died at the end of 2023, somewhere in the wake of all of that grief and family complexity and tenderness and misunderstanding, Carl and I began this exchanging of voice memos. And I think I'm the one who started it because I do it in my work with my clients and with my people. But I think I probably sent him one and then he was game and he sent me one back. And I was like, all right, well, this is kind of fun. Let's go. Let's see where we can take this. And so in the last 2 years, we've been doing this, especially in the last year. But we've had drier periods, quieter periods. And there's been some really hard things that have been shared. And so I think the periods that have maybe rendered or gone a little longer is there's good reason for that. We've needed this space, the breathing room, which is also part of the beauty of these voice memos. It's like it allows us all of that space, spaciousness to work with and room to breathe. And here's the thing about these voice memos. I don't think either one of us went out to, we're thinking, all right, we're going to heal our childhood. And quite honestly, I don't think Carl had a whole lot to heal. I felt like he had a rather charmed childhood in some ways. Now, of course, I understand differently, but in many ways, I think Carl had the lion's share of just understanding the ethos of our family and kind of stepping into roles and taking in what my mom, what my dad were selling, and he just drank it in and he did it in spades. And he was a true light and gift and delight in our family for a lot of reasons. And I'll go into that a little bit more. But we have a history here, and I've come to understand that his history wasn't all fine and good and all the bells and whistles that it appeared to be. And I think he's come to hear me a little differently and to listen. And that's been the beauty of this. So Carl would send me these voice memo, like he'd send me one on his way to work, and then I would respond maybe at the end of my meditation time or on a walk, or maybe while I was driving or cooking. And then over time, I just started noticing, I was like, this is really kind of doing something. It's like moving something inside of me. And it was moving even our relationship, imperceptibly maybe, but there was this sense that something was changing. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I felt it. And I was hearing him differently, and I was hearing myself differently through these memos. Because what I've learned is that voice memos do something different than live conversation or text, right? What voice memos do is slow things down. There's no interrupting. There's no pressure to respond immediately. There's no managing the other person in real time. And there's not a sense of like, you got to scramble to explain yourself before you've even felt what you feel. And then, even better, it's like you have room to speak and room to listen again and again. As Carl has said, and I've done, we re-listen to some of these messages over and over because, each time you hear something a little differently. And it's room to reflect and to come back from a more grounded place. There are so many meaningful conversations that go south on people. And I don't think it's because there is any sense of people planning that, desiring that, wanting that. And there's certainly, I'm sure there's probably a lot of truth that's being shared in these conversations, in these meaningful conversations. But I think what happens that I think voice memos allow is that you don't have enough space sometimes when you're in meaningful live conversation. And I'm not here to say I'm a huge proponent for live conversation and meaningful exchange. But when it's tender to the degree that this exchange has been tender for Carl and me, and he happens to live in California, so it's not like we get to see each other every day. It's allowed us a medium to do it. And it's allowed the spaciousness that I think was required for this to take place. And it's given us a chance to stay connected without kind of rushing things or forcing anything. And then it's also this incredible opportunity to tell the truth without needing agreement from the other, right? It's like, okay, here's your experience, here's my experience, and we're just going to let these kind of sit side by side. It's so cool. And to me, that feels like one of the real hidden gifts in this because Carl and I, we are so different. Oh my God, are we different, right? We don't have the same personality. We don't remember things the same way. And we certainly didn't move through our family in the same way. And yet, these messages, these voice memos have allowed both of us, our truths, to exist without it becoming a fight or a sense of you're right, I'm wrong, or I'm right, you're wrong. No one's fighting over the right version of this. We're both sharing our own. And Esther Perel, she says something really cool along these lines, something beautiful like how real relationship requires enough room for two realities to exist. And I think that's why this exchange has been so healing because it's not about perfect agreement, it's not about resolution of everything, but it is about room, enough room, creating enough space. And room is healing, my friends. Another thing that I think these voice memos gave me was witness. And what I mean by that is that we weren't just exchanging updates and we weren't, just kind of chit-chatting. We were witnessing each other. And the witness took place like, hey, this is what it was like for me. What was it like for you? How did you see that? How did you experience that? This is what I remember. What do you remember? This is what I didn't understand then. What did you understand, right? This is what I see now. This is what I love, or this is what hurt, or this is how I felt so unseen. And it could be just also like, this is what I'm grateful for today that I wasn't so grateful for then, or I was grateful then. And maybe, today I have an even deeper gratitude for whatever that is. But the witnessing of this, especially by someone who shared the same family kind of dynamic field, someone who knew the terrain in the home, it can be incredibly reparative. Many of us grew up loved and ideally provided for and maybe guided, but maybe not fully seen. All of us have our own unique experiences of childhood. And that could look like maybe not feeling like you were deeply mirrored in your actual nature as to who you are and the gifts that you have and just your sense of self, right? You didn't feel seen as you were kind of putting on a show or you were just showing parts of you that were accepted or acceptable or considered to be lovable. And the others you just started to learn to hide and dismiss and maybe unclaim, right? There were things that I found confusing or I was uncomfortable about. And there wasn't any validation around that confusion or discomfort. It was more of I felt very alone in that experience. And this is why I think witness matters. This kind of witness. Because for me, one of the most healing parts of the audios has been this realizing that I don't need Carl to have my exact experience in order for his presence to matter. I don't need him to remember things exactly as I do. That's not the point. And I don't need perfect alignment. But what has mattered so deeply is the honesty, the tenderness, the willingness, the heart. And that has been so medicinal. And it's also helped me understand him, but it's also helped me begin to reclaim parts of me and my own story that had really long been very blurred and blurry, confusing, and often pushed to the edges. So I'm going to weave in another one of my favorites to this conversation because I adore him, Gabor Maté, and his work comes to mind here. Because the way he speaks about adaptation, we all do it. We are incredibly adaptable beings. We're brilliant. And then how much of what we call personality is actually a brilliant response, a brilliant adaptation to the environment we were shaped in. So the adaptations we might call our personalities are really adaptations. They're not who we are, they're who we learn to be to survive, to thrive, to get our needs met. And that lens has shaped me and helped shape me so much because instead of asking, what is wrong with me? Why was I so different? Why didn't I feel like I belonged in my family system? I get to ask this question. And you can do this for yourself and another. What happened to you, or, what happened that made this make sense? What happened? What was I adapting to? What helped me survive? What did I learn about closeness, belonging, expression, safety, worth? What were the messages and how did I interpret them? Because when we begin to ask these questions, we soften. And that's the good stuff because we begin to place behavior less from this judgment and not like characterological, right? But more in context. We begin to understand the why. And then understanding the why, it doesn't erase pain, but it does create compassion, curiosity. It's just the antidote, I believe, to shame. This has been true for me, and I offer it to you because these voice memos have helped me put language to things I felt for a long time, but had never fully named. I've also done a lot of my own work in this, and I've worked with coaches and I've worked with therapists, and I've done a lot of journaling, and I get to do this work every day with my clients. So I'm fortunate. I'm digging in all the time, but I think each and every one of us has the ability and the capacity to do this. Carl's not a therapist. He's not a coach per se. He's doing his work. He's coming, I think, away from these audios with something that's really significant as well. And he's been such an incredible contributor to them. And it's understanding our family. It's understanding more of my brother. He's understanding me. It's really kind of exquisite. And I think recently I said in a memo to him, I said, I think that these messages, these reflections, these sharings back and forth have helped me stop abandoning myself inside my own history. And he then responded and said, I hear you. And yes to that. That feels so big to me because I don't think healing is always just this one big, huge breakthrough, right? I think healing is often a series of very small, honest moments, and they're held with care, okay? And that's something inside of us with that holding begins to soften and return. And that is what it has been for me. So if you are listening today and there is someone in your life, a sibling, a friend, a parent, a child, a young adult, a beloved, with whom a slower, more spacious exchange might be possible, here's my offering. Maybe just hold that gently. Not every relationship is safe for this. And you can discern and kind of decide who that might be or not. Not every person can meet you here. This is not about forcing vulnerability. But I do believe there might be one person, one thread, one relationship where a gentler form of truth-telling could become a bridge. And maybe that bridge would not solve everything. Most things don't. But maybe, just maybe, it would soften something. Maybe it would humanize something and help you hear each other differently. And then hear yourself differently. And that would be enough. For me, these voice memos with Carl have truly been a gift. And if Carl, you are listening to this, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you. There is so much gratitude here. Gratitude for our bond, gratitude for the honesty, gratitude for the tenderness, the time, the space, and gratitude that we are both still here, still walking, still talking, still learning, and still willing. So in part 2, I'm going to go a little deeper into what these voice memos actually began to reveal for us about siblinghood and family systems and adaptation, and then what it means to realize that two children, or 5, or however many in your family, can grow up in the same house and still have completely different childhoods, different parents, different experiences, and it's all good. But for now, I'm going to leave you with this. Sometimes the most ordinary things become sacred, and sometimes a voice memo becomes a bridge, and sometimes that bridge brings us home. So thanks for being here, and I can't wait to be with you all next week. So much love.